guys, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, welcome officially to the channel. This is a series where we look at various different oddities in gaming that developers made to either help the player get more into the game visually or physically. Most have had influence on games and designs years past when they were active, and today, in a way kinda, this was yet another attempt at ditching the controller in favor of another scheme, the Laserscope by Konami. Many of you know this controller from its appearance on the AVGN show where he spent a lot of time yelling fire at the screen to shoot. But let's take a look at when it came out, what the idea was, how it worked, and why it didn't take off, and ultimately, what it may have influenced going forward. The Laserscope is an odd combination of a few things, and is either arguably incredibly innovative or the worst thing ever depending on who you talk to. But let's take a step back to 1990 when Nintendo was on top and pretty much the leader in games. You see, Konami, who had been a major developer for the Nintendo Entertainment System for much of its lifespan, making games like Castlevania, Contra, and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and yes, that was Konami, Ultra was another name that they used on the system. No, I do not know why they used it, and maybe make an interesting video in the future. Either way, they had a very good reputation, and have been eyeing a rather popular light gun market at the time. So, they decided to step more into the hardware side of the console, a bit of a rarity for them, and design what they hoped would be the next big thing, the Laserscope. But what was the Laserscope? What games did it work with, and how did it work? Let's take a look at this thing a little closer and see if we can figure out just that. You see, like I said before, this device was a few things. First and foremost, it wanted to be a light gun. The lens on the top was actually a light gun apparatus, which at first glance, I know you're laughing and saying, well, how in the heck would you aim it then? That solution was much simpler. You see, you'd use the small piece of transparent plastic just below it. This acted as a crosshair that would align, hopefully, just over your eye, so that when you'd see the enemy on the screen, you would say, fire. Yeah, that's another one of those devices. It was meant to replace using your hands by just using the headset itself to control everything in the game. I'm sure parents loved this thing with their kids in the other room looking around wildly screaming, fire, 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 constantly into the headset. I would imagine if their parents were anything like mine, who were notorious for pulling out squeakers and all noisemakers out of all my toys as a child, this thing would often mysteriously disappear for that reason alone. To counter this reaction somewhat, or maybe just because they figured it would muffle your hearing, they fitted the Laserscope with headphones. This allowed the player to hear the game through the headphones while playing. To make it more flexible of a device, they actually set it up so it worked with a normal headphone jack. This would allow you to use it with your Walkman. I suppose I should explain what a Walkman is. A Walkman is what we used to play music with before your phone had everything, and you would put a cassette tape in it and hit play. Hey, stop cringing, it's what we had! We liked it! It could also plug into your Game Boy for use as headphones as well. However, I don't know that I'd want to use it in either case considering how bulky this thing is compared to normal headphones at the time. I know what you're thinking though. What games would this work with? Well, let's take a look. You see, Konami was aware that they would need some form of killer app to tie to the game to try to move the headset. And I'm not gonna lie, while I was pulling footage for this, I could almost see this working. The game was called Laser Invasion, and it sounds silly, but it's a cross between a light gun game and Top Gun. You pilot a helicopter to start with a frantic Top Gun style air combat, fighting off a giant enemy helicopter even before landing, and taking combat to the ground. Once you're on the ground, the game changes to something more akin to Punisher on the NES, with your shooting various enemies as they run onto the screen, with the added advantage of using the light gun for combat instead of the controller. This could have potentially been a huge sell for the unit in the United States, but unlike Japan where they actually packaged the game with the headset, the game was sold separately in the States, but each copy came with a discount coupon for purchase of the headset itself. And I know what you're thinking, well, how did you play it without the headset? Simple, you could actually change it to use the NES Zapper instead of the headset, and the game ran just fine. In fact, this headset was compatible with pretty much all NES Zapper gun games at the time, so in a sense, Konami was hoping to replace your Zapper with, well, this. Unfortunately for Konami, the unit never really took off, in part because of its lackluster mic making it hard to get it to fire when the user wanted it to. on top of the fact that it wasn't packed with a game outside of Japan for the most part. It was simply an optional accessory you got a small discount on when you picked up the game. It also likely didn't help that this was around the time that gamers were starting to get their first taste of the 16-bit era, with gaming consoles like the TurboGrafx-16/PC engine hitting the market, and Genesis having been out on the market for nearly a year. The Super Nintendo also launched this year as well, which would make many of these late titles sell more poorly than they would have otherwise. As for influence, you could say that this is another in a long line of stepping stones to push us more towards future devices like VR headsets, and in a way, the Kinect, as its use of the microphone was a bit of a rarity and could have influenced some of the future voice-activated commands in that device as well. However, what do you guys think of this thing? Do you think it's a cool idea? What do you think of the game that they actually did, or did you ever actually have it? Let me know in the comments. However, for now, if I could ask you for one more favor, if you could leave this video a like, and if you haven't, consider subscribing. It actually really helps the channel out. For now though, thank you so much for spending part of your day with me, and until next time, happy gaming.